Imagine it's 30 degrees Celsius outside, just baking. You've invested, I don't know, over £500,000 in this state-of-the-art, fully automated climate control for your poultry sheds.
Right, the whole works.
Exactly. You have sensors monitoring humidity, you've got automated louvers adjusting airflow by the millisecond, and feed lines regulated by algorithms.
It sounds foolproof.
It does.
Yeah.
And yet, the most critical survival tool on your farm right now is a human being in heavy overalls and a respirator mask physically walking the aisles.
Yeah, it completely shatters the illusion, doesn't it? That technology has somehow, insulated us from the raw, violent reality of the weather.
It really does.
Because when the ambient temperature hits 30 degrees, the margins for mechanical error don't just shrink. I mean, they completely evaporate.
Welcome to this deep dive into the July 2026 issue of Farming Monthly National.
Glad to be here.
For those of you listening, whether you are, grabbing a quick sandwich in the tractor cab, walking those very sheds we just mentioned, or just sitting at the kitchen table staring down a spreadsheet, we know the problems are coming thick and fast right now.
Oh, absolutely.
We're firmly in the post-subsidy era. Input costs are just refusing to normalize, and the climate is throwing absolute curveballs.
Which is why our mission today requires a slightly different approach.
Right. We aren't just going to read you the headlines today.
No, we are going to meticulously unpack the picture adverts scattered throughout this magazine.
Yeah.
Because, manufacturers, banks, and policy groups don't just spend thousands of pounds on full-page spreads by accident.
Definitely not.
The imagery they choose, the highly specific solutions they pitch, they are direct mirrors reflecting the industry's most acute anxieties.
So we are going to analyze exactly what these tools, biological products, and financial services are offering.
And more importantly, the underlying mechanics of why they could be the strategic pivot your specific operation needs today.
We are grounding the macro-level industry chaos into the micro-level investments you actually have to make.
Spot on.
So let's start with that visceral reality I mentioned at the top, the heat.
Right, the weather.
Yeah. The UK Health Security Agency has just issued amber heat alerts across massive swaths of the country. And the first image in this issue that genuinely stopped me in my tracks is tied to an urgent NFU advisory for poultry keepers.
It's a phenomenal editorial choice, honestly.
It really is.
I mean, they could have used a picture of a sun-baked field or a thermometer.
Yeah, the usual stock photos.
Exactly. Instead, they give us this deeply industrial, clinical image.
Yeah, it's an indoor poultry worker. They are clad in heavy blue overalls, thick boots, and this full respiratory mask, just walking down a narrow, dusty aisle through a massive multi-tier hen setup.
It looks intense.
It looked like a high-tech laboratory containment zone, not a traditional farm. I look at that and think, well, if I have spent my capital on climate sensors, why am I paying a human being to sweat in a shed?
Because a sensor is a point-in-time, point-in-space measurement tool.
Right.
It could tell your dashboard that the ambient temperature near the ceiling exhaust fan is 26 degrees.
Which is helpful, but
what it cannot do is detect the microclimates forming in the dead air zones in the middle of a tier system.
I see.
Yeah. A sensor doesn't possess the intuitive observational skills to spot the subtle, cascading behavioral changes in the birds before a crisis hits.
So what specific behaviors are you looking for when the heat spikes like this? I mean, as a worker walking that shed.
You are looking for panting, primarily, which is a bird's main cooling mechanism since they don't have sweat glands.
Right.
You are looking for wing spreading, where they literally lift their wings away from their bodies to expose the less feathered skin to whatever airflow exists.
That makes sense.
You're also looking for lethargy, and crucially, you're looking for crowding.
Crowding? Why do they crowd if it's hot?
Well, if the ventilation system has a dead spot, the birds will migrate away from it. Which then creates a terrifying density of body heat in another part of the shed, and that just accelerates the mortality risk.
Oh, wow. So this image is basically a visual command.
It is.
It is telling the farmer that extreme weather requires extreme hands-on vigilance. Automation is your baseline, but human intuition is your fail-safe.
Exactly. You have to physically check the airspeed at the bird level, not just the fan RPM on a screen.
Right.
You have to ensure the water lines aren't just flowing, but that the water inside them hasn't heated up to the point where the birds refuse to drink it.
Because then you have dehydration on top of heat stress.
Spot on. And that respirator mask on the worker is a stark reminder of the biosecurity and air quality challenges too.
Right, because of all the dust.
Yeah, when your ventilation fans are running at absolute maximum capacity, They are whipping up incredible amounts of dander, dust, and dried fecal matter.
Just a horrific environment to work in.
The physical toll on the worker is immense, but their presence is just non-negotiable right now.
No, that physical heat stress doesn't just threaten the indoor environments, does it?
Not at all.
When temperatures sit at 30 degrees, the biological clock on every pest on the farm goes into absolute overdrive.
Oh, it really does.
Look at this text advert a few pages further in. It says, dairy farmers warned calf pens can fuel summer fly surge.
Yeah, that one caught my eye too.
I have to challenge the premise of this a bit, though. I mean, every farm has flies in July.
Sure they do.
The milking parlor is full of them. The muck heap is full of them. Why is this advert specifically targeting the calf pen as the main culprit?
It comes down to the biological life cycle of the fly and the specific thermodynamics of a calf pen.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Well, yes, the muck heap has flies, but a muck heap is often exposed to wind and UV light.
Right.
And those are natural desiccants that inhibit massive larval explosions. A calf pen, by its very design, is a highly protected microenvironment.
Because you are trying to keep a young, vulnerable animal warm and out of the draft.
Precisely. So you have restricted airflow, creating a warm, stagnant pocket of air.
Perfect for pests.
Yeah. Now, add the moisture from urine and fresh manure. But the absolute catalyst, the thing that turns it into ground zero for a fly population, is milk.
Oh, the spillages from feeding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Spilled milk, saliva, and calf starter feed create this high protein, high sugar, high moisture sludge.
That sounds absolutely vile.
It is. But for a female fly looking to lay eggs, that environment is biologically perfect. The heat accelerates the incubation period.
So they just multiply.
Eggs hatch into maggots faster, they pupate faster, and they emerge as adult flies in a fraction of the time it would take out on the open pasture.
So if you ignore the calf pens, you are essentially running a highly efficient fly breeding facility that just exports pests to the rest of the farm.
That's exactly what's happening. And for the dairy farmer listening, this matters because a fly surge is a direct economic drain.
It's not just an annoyance.
No, it is not just about cows swishing their tails. Flies cause severe behavioral sinking in a herd.
Behavioral sinking.
Yeah, if your cows are using all their metabolic energy, stomping their feet, twitching and grouping tightly together in the middle of a field to minimize their exposed surface area, well, they are not grazing.
And if they aren't eating, your milk yield drops immediately.
The yield plummets, the stress suppresses their immune system, and then you factor in vector-borne diseases.
Like summer mastitis.
Exactly, which can ruin a quarter of an udder permanently. So this advert is tapping into a direct threat to your summer milk check by telling you to attack the problem at its biological source.
Rather than just spraying chemicals in the parlor when it's already too late.
Exactly. Intervene at the bottleneck.
Right. Now, moving from the dairy to the sheep sector, there is an image here that tells a really fascinating story, but only if you connect the dots.
Oh, the river one.
Yeah. It is a gorgeous, picturesque photo of sheep grazing peacefully by a shaded river. The text teases, post-weaning management key to boosting next season's lamb output.
It looks like a postcard.
It really does. On the surface, this just looks like a generic stock photo for a British tourism board.
It does. But when you link it to the accompanying article featuring the National Sheep Association, the context shifts entirely.
How so?
Well, the NSA is arguing that this specific type of grazing is a highly effective landscape-level intervention against severe wildfires.
Okay, wait. I look at this and I see a flock of Romneys eating grass. I don't see a fire brigade. How does grazing sheep actually alter the thermodynamics of a wildfire?
It is all about the management of combustible fuel loads.
Fuel loads?
Yeah. In a hot, dry July, unmanaged vegetation, the long senescent grasses, the scrub, the dense undergrowth, it loses its moisture content and just turns into tinder.
It becomes dry matter.
Extremely volatile dry matter. If a spark catches in that environment, the dense, unmanaged vegetation acts as what firefighters call a fuel ladder.
A ladder, meaning it goes up.
Exactly. The fire uses the tall grass to climb into the shrubs, and from the shrubs, it climbs into the tree canopy.
Right.
That creates those catastrophic, fast-moving crown fires we are increasingly seeing in the UK.
So where do the sheep come in? Do they just eat the ladder?
Essentially, yes. By deploying sheep onto these vulnerable landscapes post-weaning, which, by the way, is the period when you need to carefully manage the ewe's body condition before the next breeding cycle anyway.
Right, before tupping.
Yes. So by doing that, you are systematically removing that fuel load. The sheep are biological defoliators.
I love that term.
They eat the long grasses, they trample the scrub, they break up the continuous carpet of dry matter. They essentially create living fire breaks.
Wow.
When a fire hits a heavily grazed area, it drops from the canopy back to the ground, its intensity plummets, and it becomes vastly easier to extinguish.
That is a phenomenal double utility. I mean, you are managing the nutritional requirements of your flock, preparing them for tupping, and simultaneously providing a massive landscape-level environmental service.
And this is the critical economic pivot for the listener.
Okay.
In a post-subsidy world where the basic payment scheme is gone, being able to articulate and monetize that environmental service is huge.
You mean getting paid by the council?
Exactly. Proving to a local council or environmental trust that your flock is actively mitigating climate disaster risks, that is an incredibly valuable asset. You are no longer just selling lamb, you are selling risk mitigation.
Speaking of complex environmental risk mitigation, there is a tension highlighted in the cattle sector that I find completely fascinating.
Oh, the dung beetles.
Yes. The magazine urges dairy farmers to review their digital dermatitis protocols, but there is also a major July webinar focusing on the threat of lungworm. And the dilemma here involves the dung beetle.
This is the absolute crux of modern, ecologically aware agronomy, the lungworm versus dung beetle dilemma.
I look at the South Wales project they mentioned, and honestly, if my cattle are standing in a field coughing up their lungs right now, I am reaching for the chemical poron wormer.
Of course you are.
I am not risking my herd's respiratory health and my profit margins for an insect. How is a farmer supposed to justify that trade-off?
It is a completely natural reaction.
Yeah.
I mean, lungworm is devastating.
It sounds awful.
The larvae are ingested from the pasture, they migrate through the intestinal wall, travel to the lungs, and mature into adults that literally block the airways. It causes severe respiratory distress, weight loss, and secondary pneumonia. You absolutely have to treat it.
Right?
But you have to understand the macroeconomic value of the dung beetle before you just blanket spray your herd with chemicals.
Okay, so walk me through the economics of a beetle.
Well, a single cow produces roughly 10 to 12 pats of manure a day.
Right.
Over a grazing season, a herd drops an immense tonnage of feces onto your pasture. If that manure just sits there, it smothers the grass underneath it, killing the sward.
Just covering the grazing area.
Exactly. More importantly, it creates an incubator for parasite larvae, including the very lungworm you're trying to fight, and nuisance flies.
It just sits there baking in the sun.
Until the dung beetle arrives.
A cavalry.
Right. These insects are the unsung, unpaid biological engineers of your farm. They dive into that manure pat, physically tear it apart, and bury the nutrient-dense matter deep into the soil profile.
Aerating the soil.
By doing this, they instantly aerate the soil. They cycle nitrogen and phosphorus directly down to the root zone of the grass, and crucially, they completely destroy the habitat for the parasite larvae.
So they dry it out.
They desiccate the worm eggs. They are performing thousands of pounds worth of mechanical harrowing, fertilizing, and parasite control for free every single day.
Okay, so they are incredibly valuable. But if I use a chemical wormer on my coughing cow, what actually happens?
The active ingredients in many traditional anthelmintics, particularly the macrocyclic lactones like ivermectin, they are highly persistent.
Meaning they don't break down quickly.
Right. They pass straight through the cow's digestive tract and are excreted in the manure. These chemicals are neurotoxins. Yeah. When the dung beetle arrives to process the manure, it ingests the chemical, its nervous system paralyzes, and it dies.
So you solve the immediate respiratory crisis in the cow, but you annihilate the biological workforce that was keeping the pasture hygienic in the first place.
Exactly. And the long-term cascade is brutal.
I can imagine.
Without the beetles, the manure piles up, smothering your grass and reducing your grazing area. The parasite burden on the pasture skyrockets because the larvae aren't being destroyed.
A vicious cycle.
So the next time the cows graze that field, they ingest an even higher load of lungworm, requiring you to worm them even more frequently. You lock yourself into this highly expensive cycle of chemical dependence while simultaneously degrading your soil structure.
So what is the operational takeaway for the listener? Because, I mean, I can't let the cows die and I can't kill the beetles.
It requires a massive shift from blanket treatment to precision biology.
Precision biology.
Yeah. The webinar is likely discussing strategies like targeted selective treatment. Instead of running the whole herd through the crush and pouring chemicals on every back, you monitor the herd closely.
So you test them first.
You conduct fecal egg counts, and you only treat the specific individuals that are actually struggling with the parasite burden. You might also explore different classes of wormers that have a shorter half-life or are less toxic to invertebrates. It is about using the chemical as a surgical scalpel rather than a sledgehammer.
That requires a monumental shift in mindset. You are no longer just a stockman. You have to operate as an applied ecologist.
You really do.
And balancing that kind of precision biology requires serious capital. You cannot experiment with targeted selective treatments if you are living hand-to-mouth and terrified of a yield drop.
Absolutely not.
Which brings us to the elephant in the room regarding capital right now, the policy and financial landscape.
The balance sheet is the foundation of everything we just discussed. If the finances don't work, the ecology doesn't matter.
The magazine features a blistering commentary by a Mr. Moody regarding life after subsidies, and he does not pull his punches.
No, he does not.
He states that farmers are no longer beholden to government payments and that it is time to move past 30 years of government schemes that have been muffling innovation.
That phrase is so telling.
It is. On top of that, he notes that looming changes to inheritance tax are prompting serious business restructuring across the country.
I really want to zero in on that phrase, muffling innovation.
Go for it.
For 3 decades, the basic payment scheme and the European policies that preceded it, they provided a structural safety net. You received a check in the post based primarily on the hectareage you managed, regardless of your agronomic efficiency.
It was guaranteed liquidity, just for having the land.
It was. And while it undoubtedly kept thousands of family farms solvent through volatile commodity cycles, Mr. Moody is arguing the macroeconomic flip side.
Which is complacency.
Basically, if 30% of your net margin is guaranteed just for holding land, the sheer, desperate Darwinian drive to innovate, to ruthlessly cut inefficiencies, or to pivot to a radically different business model is inherently muffled. You just don't take wild risks when you have a comfortable baseline.
I look at it like taking the training wheels off a bicycle.
That's a great analogy.
Right. For 30 years, British agriculture has been riding with these financial training wheels. And now the government has taken a spanner and ripped them off.
And the initial sensation is absolute terror.
Of course it is. You wobble. You feel completely exposed to the gravity of the global market, to the brutality of the weather, to the whims of the supermarkets. The instinct is to panic and just grip the handlebars tighter.
Oh, yeah.
But, and this is the liberating part, once you figure out the new balance, you realize you can finally lean into the corners. You can dictate your own velocity. You can steer the business exactly where you want it to go, rather than just coasting in a rigid straight line mandated by a government form.
That is a perfect encapsulation of the current psychology.
Yeah.
Without the constraints of those old compliance schemes, you have total agency. Mr. Moody is issuing a call to arms. He explicitly tells farmers to take control of their destiny. Let land out to solar or environmental schemes if it's not agriculturally productive.
Right. Diversify.
Change your crop rotations without worrying about historic subsidy entitlements. Restructure the family business to survive the inheritance tax burden.
But, I mean, agency and innovation cost money.
They do.
If the government isn't writing the massive checks anymore, where is the liquidity coming from to fund this new direction?
Let's look at the sources, because there is a massive pivot happening here. The capital is still flowing, but it is coming from private finance and municipal procurement.
This is perhaps the most significant structural shift in the magazine. Let's start with the private sector.
Okay.
There's a huge announcement regarding a partnership between Lloyds Banking Group, which is the UK's largest agricultural lender, and Wildfarmed.
What are they doing? They have pooled a massive investment fund, specifically to accelerate the transition to nature-positive or regenerative farming.
I have to ask, why does a massive corporate bank care about nature-positive farming? This isn't some boutique environmental charity handing out grants. This is Lloyds. They deal in risk and return.
Exactly. And that is why this is so significant. Lloyds has looked at the actuarial data and the risk profile of British farming in the 2020s, and they have fundamentally changed their calculus.
How so?
Soil health, clean water, and resilient biological ecosystems are no longer viewed as nice-to-haves for a corporate social responsibility brochure.
Right.
They are now viewed as fundamental indicators of financial reliability.
Walk me through the bank's logic on that. How does soil carbon equal financial security for a banker in London?
Imagine 2 farms applying for a £1 million loan.
Okay.
Farm A operates a highly degraded, heavily compacted soil system that relies entirely on massive, expensive inputs of synthetic nitrogen and fungicides to force a yield.
The old way.
Right. When a drought hits, that soil turns to concrete, the crop fails, and the farmer defaults on the loan.
Makes sense.
Now, Farm B operates a regenerative system. They have built deep, friable, sponge-like soil bursting with organic matter. That soil retains water during a drought and drains rapidly during a flood. They require 50% fewer synthetic inputs to achieve a profitable margin.
So Farm B is inherently insulated against both climate volatility and geopolitical fertilizer spikes.
Precisely. Ben Makowecki, the Agriculture Sustainability Director at Lloyd's, explicitly states they want to create a more reliable financial model for farmers.
Ah, I see.
The bank is putting hard capital behind practices that build biological resilience, because biological resilience equals repayment resilience.
And there is a deeply human metric attached to this wild farm data, actually. They report that 91% of their growers experience a positive impact on their well-being and job satisfaction.
That's a massive number.
91%. In an industry plagued by isolation and immense stress, that number is staggering.
It goes back to your training wheels analogy, I think.
How so?
When you transition to a regenerative system, you are taking back agency. You are stepping off the treadmill of constantly chasing incremental yield increases with exponentially more expensive chemicals, just to break even.
You actually control the system.
You start working with the complex biology of your land. You see earthworms returning. You see the soil structure change. And crucially, models like Wild Farmed often come with guaranteed premium contracts for the grain. So you have regained control over your agronomy and your margins. That agency is the bedrock of improved mental health.
So that is the private banking side stepping up. What about the public sector? Because while the national government is cutting direct subsidies, there is an impartial policy report in here discussing Annie Burnham and the push for local public procurement.
The report highlights severe criticism of cut-price hospital and school menus, and it leans on research from the CPRE, the countryside charity.
What's the CPRE saying?
They suggest there could be a £1 billion boost for British farming if local procurement pledges are actually fulfilled.
£1 billion injected into the domestic market. How does the economic mechanic of local procurement actually work? Because historically, the mandate for a hospital or a school has been incredibly simple: buy the cheapest possible calories to save the taxpayer money.
Which almost inevitably means importing low-standard, mass-produced commodities from global markets.
Right.
The cut-price procurement culture is a race to the bottom. But the economic argument shifting now is that this is a massive false economy.
How so? Why is it false?
If a local authority spends £10 million on cheap imported food, that money instantly leaves the regional economy. It vanishes.
Off to another country.
Exactly. But if you mandate that a percentage of that institutional food budget must be spent on locally produced British food that meets specific environmental standards, you achieve multiple compounding goals.
You guarantee a stable, massive market for the farmers in that county.
Yes. And you inject that capital directly into the rural economy. The farmer uses that money to employ local mechanics, buy from local feed merchants, and hire local labor. The velocity of that money within the region increases dramatically.
The multiplier effect.
Furthermore, you reduce food miles, and theoretically, you provide vastly better nutritional outcomes for patients and students. It is about using institutional buying power as an engine for regional economic stability.
So for the farmer sitting at the kitchen table right now, the takeaway is pretty clear. Your funding model must evolve. The era of waiting for the area-based subsidy check is well and truly over.
Completely over.
The future of farm capitalization lies in engaging with lenders who will reward your soil metrics and positioning your business to supply these emerging, localized public procurement chains.
You have to build the business plan for that new reality. But once you have the plan, you have to execute the work on the ground. You have to physically farm the land.
Yeah, you still have to do the work.
And to do that efficiently enough to make these new margins work, you need the right tools.
Which brings us perfectly to the machinery adverts, the heavy iron.
My favorite part.
If you want to know how the manufacturing sector is responding to these massive pressures, high input costs, the demand for soil health, the need for hyper efficiency, you look at the metal they are pushing. Let's start in the livestock shed with the Teagle Tomahawk bale processors.
The Tomahawk is an absolute staple on British livestock farms, but the way it's being marketed here is highly specific to the current economic crunch.
The imagery is striking. You have these heavy-duty, bright red machines. We see a telehandler dropping a massive round bale of straw into the drum of one, and another image shows the machine blowing a beautifully even golden arc of chopped straw deep into a cattle barn.
Very evocative.
The headline claims are bold too. Up to 30% straw saved, improved cow health and happiness, and uniformly chopped straw for TMR.
Let's break down the physical mechanics of that return on investment. Let's start with the claim of saving 30% on straw.
Okay, because with straw prices being incredibly volatile depending on how the arable harvest went, straw is a major line item. How does a machine save you a third of your bedding material just by chopping it? I mean, a bale weighs what a bale weighs.
It is entirely about physical distribution and surface area.
Okay.
If you are manually bedding a pen with a pitchfork or using an older, less refined spreader, the straw comes out in clumps. You get thick, dense mats of straw in some areas and bare concrete in others.
And the cows immediately soil the thick clumps while slipping on the bare concrete.
Exactly. The moisture from the urine pools because the dense clumps can't absorb it efficiently. So you have to constantly throw more straw on top just to keep the cattle clean.
Which wastes straw.
A machine like the Tomahawk uses high-speed rotors to physically shred the straw and blow it out in a highly aerated uniform layer. It maximizes the surface area of every single stalk. You create a deeper, fluffier, highly absorbent bed using vastly less physical material.
That makes total sense.
The moisture wicks away more effectively, the bed stays drier for longer, and you don't have to bed down as frequently. That is exactly where the 30% physical saving materializes.
And less straw going in means less muck to haul out at the end of the winter, which saves diesel, wear and tear on the loader, and your own time.
Huge savings.
But the advert doesn't just stop at bedding. It pushes the phrase, uniformly chopped straw for TMR. Now, TMR is total mixed ration, the blended diet you feed to high-yielding dairy cows. Why are we feeding straw to cows, and why does the physical length of the chop matter so much to their biology?
This is a critical component of ruminant nutrition. You add straw to a TMR to provide what nutritionists call scratch factor.
Scratch factor.
It is physically effective neutral detergent fiber. When the cow ingests this short, coarse straw, it literally scratches the internal lining of the rumen wall.
Why on earth do you want to scratch the inside of a cow's stomach?
Because that physical stimulation triggers the cow to ruminate, to chew its cud. The act of aggressive rumination produces massive quantities of saliva. Cow saliva is highly alkaline. It is packed with sodium bicarbonate. When that saliva drops into the rumen, it buffers the severe acids produced by the fermentation of the high-energy grains and concentrates in the diet.
So it's an antacid.
Exactly. It stabilizes the rumen pH and prevents clinical acidosis.
Okay, so the fiber is a biological requirement. But why does the Tomahawk need to chop it uniformly? If I just throw long stalks of straw into the mixer wagon, doesn't it do the same thing?
Absolutely not, because cows are incredibly fussy, manipulative eaters. They are master sorters.
Right.
If you put a mix of wet silage, delicious high-energy concentrates, and long unchopped straw in front of a cow, she will use her muzzle to physically root through the feed, pushing the long straw to the side so she can gorge on the sweet, high-starch grains.
She eats the dessert and leaves the broccoli.
Exactly. And when she does that, she gets a massive spike in rumen acid from the grain, but she hasn't consumed the scratch factor to produce the buffering saliva.
So she gets sick.
Her rumen pH crashes, she gets sick, her feed conversion efficiency plummets, and your butterfat production drops off a cliff. By using a machine that provides a consistently short, uniform chop length, the straw binds homogeneously with the wet silage.
She can't sort it out.
The cow physically cannot sort it. Every single mouthful she takes is perfectly balanced. So this red machine isn't just a shredder, it is a direct mechanical driver of rumen stability and milk yield.
It is brilliant how mechanical action dictates a biological outcome like that. Now let's move out of the livestock sheds and into the arable fields.
The big toys.
Yeah, the capital investment here is even steeper. The advert that dominates this section is for the Väderstad Spirit and Inspire seed drills.
Väderstad is synonymous with heavy, high-speed precision engineering in the arable sector.
The imagery is a masterclass in contrasting scale with micro detail. The main picture is this massive, imposing, multi-meter wide red seed drill being pulled across a vast, flat, dusty field. It screams high-capacity, high-acreage capability.
It's impressive looking.
But right next to it, set against a stark white background, is a 3D CAD render of a single tiny component, the patented Triforce 2 Coulter arm suspension.
They are selling you massive scale, but they are proving the efficacy of that scale through microscopic engineering.
The text claims this Triforce 2 suspension brings an unmatched ability to maintain set coulter pressure when stressed by field irregularities, resulting in more consistent seed depth and even germination.
It's quite the claim.
I read that and think it sounds like they've put the independent suspension of an off-road rally car onto a seed drill. Why does a drill need shock absorbers? A cultivated field looks relatively flat, doesn't it?
To the human eye, standing on the headland, it looks flat. To a seed drill traveling at 12 kilometers an hour, the soil surface is incredibly violent and chaotic.
Really?
A field is full of hidden microvariations. You have the compacted ruts of old tractor tram lines, varying soil types that change from light sand to heavy clay in a matter of meters, hidden clods of earth, and subtle undulations.
So what happens if you take a traditional rigid seed drill over that terrain?
If the coulter, the metal disc that cuts the trench for the seed, is on a rigid arm, and it hits a hard clod or a bump, the entire unit lifts up. The seed is deposited right on the surface, or far too shallow.
And if it hits a soft spot?
If the drill hits a soft, sandy patch, the heavy weight of the machine pushes the rigid coulter too deep, burying the seed under inches of soil.
And what is the biological consequence of that uneven placement?
Agronomic chaos. A seed placed too shallow will either desiccate in the summer sun or be eaten by crows and pigeons.
A total loss.
Yeah. A seed placed too deep exhausts all its carbohydrate reserves just trying to push its first leaf to the surface. It emerges weak, delayed, and vulnerable to disease.
You end up with a highly uneven field.
You get staggered emergence. And staggered emergence destroys your efficiency for the rest of the year. If 30% of your wheat is at the 2-leaf stage, 50% is at the 3-leaf stage, and 20% hasn't even emerged yet, how do you time your expensive herbicide application?
You can't. You can't. If part of the field is ripe for harvest and the rest is still green, what do? You end up combining wet grain, your drying costs skyrocket, and your yield is compromised. So the mechanics of this Triforce 2 suspension, these hydraulic or pneumatic shock absorbers on every single coulter arm, mean that they independently absorb the physical shocks of the field.
Exactly.
If the left wheel goes over a rut, the suspension pushes the coulter down to maintain contact. If it hits a rock, it lifts to prevent damage, but immediately returns to its set depth.
Spot on.
The disc stays at exactly, say, 3 centimeters deep across the entire width of the machine, regardless of the terrain.
Exactly. Uniform mechanical depth guarantees uniform biological emergence. The entire crop emerges on the exact same day. It acts as a single, homogeneous, competitive canopy.
Like a carpet.
Yes. It outcompetes weeds naturally, it utilizes applied fertilizer with maximum efficiency, and it makes your chemical spray timings perfectly accurate. This microscopic suspension tech is a direct engine for reducing chemical waste and maximizing total yield.
It is incredible how the physics of a suspension block dictates the biology of a wheat canopy. But you cannot get that perfect seedbed if you have destroyed the physical structure of your soil in the months leading up to planting.
Very true.
Which brings us to a fascinating cluster of adverts regarding specialized cultivation and application. We have sleek, red TYM tractors equipped with front loaders, and then we have this absolute behemoth, the Vervaet Hydro Trike 3.0.
It is a stunning piece of machinery.
It looks like a futuristic, massive-wheeled lunar rover painted red, but it's actually a self-propelled slurry applicator.
Right.
These machines represent the two opposing forces in a modern fleet, I think. The need for a versatile utility tool and the need for a highly specialized, low-impact scalpel.
Let's look at the TYM tractors first. The advert pushes year-round utility. Mucking out, feeding, hauling gravel.
The daily chores.
For a mixed farm, a mid-horsepower tractor with a loader is the kinetic connective tissue of the business. You cannot afford to have 50,000 pounds of capital sitting idle in a shed for 6 months.
No, it has to earn its keep.
It needs to be hauling fertilizer in the spring, turning hay in the summer, loading the TMR diet feeder all winter, and scraping the concrete yards every single morning. It is about maximizing asset utilization.
But the Vervaet Hydro Trike is the exact opposite of a general utility machine. It does one thing.
It does one thing, but it solves one of the most destructive physical problems in modern farming: soil compaction during nutrient application.
Walk me through the physics of that, because slurry is heavy.
Slurry is incredibly heavy. It is mostly water. If you take a standard, heavy tractor pulling a massive 3-axle slurry tanker full of thousands of gallons of liquid into a field, especially if the soil conditions are slightly damp, you are exerting immense concentrated point load pressure to the tractor tires.
You are basically driving a steamroller over your field.
You are, and that pressure crushes the macropores in the soil. It physically compresses the soil particles together, destroying the capillary action that allows water to drain and oxygen to reach the roots.
It suffocates the soil.
A compacted layer acts like a concrete pan under the surface. The crop roots cannot penetrate it, so they grow sideways, meaning the plant has no resilience during a drought.
So how does this three-wheeled Vervaet machine prevent that?
It is designed entirely around weight distribution and footprint. Firstly, it has massive high-flotation tires that spread the weight of the machine over a vast surface area, drastically reducing the pounds per square inch of pressure on the ground.
Like snowshoes.
Exactly. Secondly, the three-wheel design often allows for crab steering or offset tracking. This means that as the machine drives down the field, the single front wheel takes one path, and the two rear wheels take completely separate paths.
Ah, so no wheel ever drives over the compacted rut of the wheel in front of it.
Precisely. The weight is distributed evenly across the entire width of the machine's pass, rather than being concentrated into deep, destructive tram lines. It allows the farmer to apply vital organic nutrients to the growing crop without permanently destroying the physical architecture of the soil they are trying to feed.
It is heavy engineering deployed to protect fragile biology. But heavy engineering costs an absolute fortune. That Vervaet Trike, or the Väderstad drill, requires hundreds of thousands of pounds of capital.
Serious money.
Which brings us to an advert that doesn't show a single piece of machinery. It just shows numbers. Krone Finance is offering 0% finance available over 4 + 40 months on specific equipment like their Vervaet headers.
In the economic context of July 2026, with interest rates stubbornly high and the subsidy checks gone, this seemingly boring financial advert is arguably the most powerful tool in the magazine.
Why is a machinery manufacturer acting like a central bank?
Because they know that no matter how brilliant the suspension technology on the drill is, or how gently the trike treads on the soil, the farmer cannot utilize it if they cannot afford the cost of capital. Borrowing money from a traditional high street bank to buy a machine right now carries a brutal interest rate penalty.
So unpack this specific 4 + 40 structure for me. What does that actually mean for the farmer's cash flow?
It means you pay 4 monthly installments up front as your initial deposit, and then you have 40 monthly installments remaining. It is a 44-month agreement. But the genius of it is the 0% interest rate.
It is essentially free money, or at least free time to pay the money.
It is an incredible arbitrage opportunity for a farmer. If you need a new tedder, which is a critical machine for fluffing and drying grass rapidly between unpredictable summer rain showers to make high-quality silage, you could theoretically pay cash for it.
Sure.
But draining 50,000 pounds of cash out of your business account ties up all your working liquidity.
And you need that liquidity to buy fertilizer or pay the vet or just survive a delayed contract payment.
Exactly. By utilizing Krone's 0% offer, the farmer acquires the physical asset immediately. They put it to work in the field, saving time and improving forage quality a day, but they spread the cost predictably over nearly 4 years without paying a single penny in interest penalties.
That's massive.
And because of inflation, the real-world value of the final payment in month 44 is actually lower than it is today. It is a highly aggressive, deeply strategic cash flow management tool that allows the business to upgrade its technology while remaining highly liquid.
So we have restructured our financing, we've bought the precision drill, we are managing soil compaction, and we are preserving our working capital. But what are we actually putting into the ground? What are we feeding these crops? That brings us to the arable advancements and the brutal economics of inputs.
This is where the pressure on the arable balance sheet reaches its absolute peak.
There is a picture advert in this section that is so minimalist, it's almost intimidating. It is just a giant, bold letter N. A chemical symbol for nitrogen.
Very ominous.
There are no smiling farmers, no golden sunsets over wheat field, just a stark monolithic N.
It is a brilliant piece of graphic design because it screams at the subconscious of anyone who has to purchase fertilizer.
The text accompanying the arable section explains why it's so stark. The prices of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the big 3 NPK base fertilizers, they remain incredibly sticky and stubbornly high.
They do.
The geopolitical supply chain shocks haven't fully resolved. The article then explicitly points to biostimulants, specifically one called ambigreen, as a viable strategic solution to this cost crisis.
To understand the value of this, we need to connect the biostimulant directly back to the Väderstad seed drill we just dissected.
Connect the dots for me. How does a biological liquid connect to a heavy steel drill?
It is about the strategy of stacked marginal gains. When synthetic nitrogen costs a fortune because the natural gas required to manufacture it via the Haber-Bosch process is expensive, you cannot afford to waste a single granule.
Not one.
You cannot afford for the fertilizer to leach into the groundwater or become locked up in the soil. You have to guarantee that the plant physically absorbs what you apply.
Right. So step one is the mechanical precision.
Exactly. Step 1, use the Väderstad drill with the Triforce 2 suspension to ensure perfect uniform seed placement. You give the seed the best possible physical environment to germinate. Step 2, you apply a biostimulant like ambergris.
What exactly is a biostimulant doing at a cellular level? Is it just a cheaper type of fertilizer?
No, it is fundamentally different. A biostimulant does not add primary NPK nutrients to the soil. Biostimulants are complex mixtures of organic acids, beneficial microorganisms, or seaweed extracts that you apply to the seed or spray onto the growing leaves.
So what's their job?
Their job is to stimulate the natural biological processes within the plant and the surrounding soil ecosystem.
I used the analogy earlier of it being like a digestive enzyme. If the expensive fertilizer is the food, the biostimulant is the enzyme helping the plant actually digest and absorb the food.
That is the perfect operational metaphor. When you apply a biostimulant, it interacts with the rhizosphere, the biologically active zone, right around the plant's roots. You can stimulate the roots to secrete exudates that unlock phosphorus that is chemically bound to soil particles, making it available to the plant.
Wow.
It encourages massive root mass expansion, meaning the plant has a larger physical net to capture the nitrogen you applied. And crucially, it helps the plant tolerate abiotic stress.
Like the 30-degree heat waves we talked about in the first segment?
Precisely. A plant treated with a biostimulant can often maintain photosynthesis and cell turgor pressure during a drought much longer than an untreated plant. So by combining the mechanical precision of a drill with the biological efficiency of the stimulant, you optimize the system so thoroughly that you can potentially dial back the application rates of the incredibly expensive synthetic nitrogen without sacrificing your final yield.
That's brilliant.
It is a defensive maneuver to protect your profit margin.
That is a fascinating synthesis of mechanics and biology. But it is not just about what you apply, it is fundamentally about what you choose to plant in the first place.
Very true.
There's an advert here that uses classic bait-and-switch imagery. It's an idyllic, sun-drenched photograph of a massive combine harvester working its way through a golden wheat field. And in the foreground, there are these bright, vibrant yellow sunflowers.
Beautiful, yeah.
It looks like the ultimate farming dream. But the headline text accompanying it tells a much more pragmatic defensive story. It says, the factors turning farmers to winter linseed.
The visual is selling the emotional dream of a dry, bumper harvest, but the text is grounded in the strategic reality of risk management in British arable farming.
Why are farmers turning to winter linseed? Linseed isn't exactly the rock star of the commodity markets, is it?
It is not about topping the commodity price charts. It is about rotational risk diversification. British arable farmers are desperately looking for alternative break crops.
For those newer to the specific agronomy, a break crop is planted between the main cash crops, like wheat or barley, to physically break the life cycles of soil-borne diseases and pests that build up if you grow cereals year after year.
Exactly. Historically, the undisputed king of the British break crop has been winter oilseed rape, the bright yellow fields you see in the spring.
Oh, yeah, they're everywhere.
But oilseed rape has become an agronomic nightmare over the last decade. The ban on certain neonicotinoid seed treatments has left the crop completely vulnerable to the cabbage stem flea beetle, which absolutely decimates the young plants as they emerge.
They just shoot them to bits.
Add in rampant diseases like light leaf spot, and growing oilseed rape has become a massive financial gamble.
So they are looking for a safer bet.
They are looking for agronomic resilience. Winter linseed offers a completely different root architecture. It has a deep taproot that conditions the soil beautifully for the following wheat crop. It breaks the cereal disease cycle. It is not targeted by the flea beetle.
And it's a winter crop.
Yes. Crucially, by planting a winter variety, the farmer spreads their operational workload. They drill it in the autumn, meaning they aren't trying to force all their planting into a narrow, wet, unpredictable window in the spring. Linseed is a strategic choice to spread biological, weather, and operational risk.
Speaking of operational risk and the sheer logistics of harvest, we have to talk about the UPP harvesters mentioned in the text. This is a deployment that is expecting to save over 30% of harvest costs, slash casual labor requirements, and unlock 10 million pounds in side stream value.
This touches on what is arguably the most acute existential crisis in modern commercial farming, the availability of human labor.
We hear about the labor shortage constantly, but slashing casual labor isn't just a cost-cutting measure anymore, is it? For some specialty crop farms, it is literally the only way the crop will ever leave the field.
Precisely. Post-Brexit immigration changes, combined with a post-COVID shift in the global workforce, have made securing reliable, skilled, seasonal labor for harvest an absolute nightmare.
Crops are just rotting.
The crops rot in the fields because there is no one to pick them. If an automated harvesting system like the UKP model mentioned can eliminate the need for a massive crew of casual workers, that is a monumental operational de-risking.
How does a machine like that actually work? Because harvesting a delicate crop isn't like combining wheat where you just mow the whole field.
No, it requires advanced robotics and computer vision. These machines use high-speed cameras and AI algorithms to scan the crop canopy in real time. The machine identifies which specific plants are mature and ready for harvest based on size and color, and which need another few days to grow.
It's that smart.
It then uses mechanical arms or precise cutting mechanisms to selectively harvest only the mature crop without damaging the surrounding plants.
That is mind-blowing precision. And what is this 10 million pounds in side stream value they mentioned?
This is where the technology truly pushes the boundaries of profitability. A human hand-picking crew only cares about the primary cash crop, say the broccoli floret.
Right, they just grab the head.
The rest of the plant is left in the field. Automated systems can be designed to harvest the primary crop and simultaneously gather the high-volume biomass, the stalks, the leaves that is left behind.
And do what with it?
This side stream biomass can then be monetized. It could be sold for anaerobic digestion to produce biogas or processed to extract high-value biochemicals or plant proteins. The technology isn't just saving labor, it is creating entirely new revenue streams from waste.
It is taking field efficiency to its absolute thermodynamic limit. But, I mean, how do you know if these new alternative crops or these advanced biological protocols actually work on your specific farm and your specific soil type? Risking an entire field on a new idea is terrifying when margins are this tight.
Which is exactly why the final piece of this arable section is so vital. The British On-Farm Innovation Network, known as Bro-Off-Ein, is actively recruiting farmers.
The text notes they are running DEFRA-funded projects with acronyms like LLS Erased and Probity, recruiting farmers to test disease resilience and precision bred crops, heavily focused on that devastating light leaf spot disease and oilseed rape we just discussed.
I implore anyone listening to look closely at these trials.
I'll play devil's advocate here. Why should I, a busy farmer already overwhelmed by harvest logistics and extreme heat, volunteer for a trial? Doesn't it just mean endless paperwork, clipboard-wielding researchers tramping through my fields, and a high likelihood of the experimental crop failing?
It does involve rigorous data collection, yes.
Yeah.
But look at the strategic upside. Engaging with BOFIN is a way to get cutting-edge agronomic science onto your farm, essentially risk-free.
Because it's funded.
These projects are fully funded. You get access to new, precision-bred genetic crop varieties or advanced disease management protocols years before they're available to the general market.
You get a head start on the technology curve.
Exactly. More importantly, you get professional researchers actively monitoring the microbiology and performance of your specific fields, generating high-resolution data that you could never afford to gather yourself.
That's a good point.
You essentially bolt a free R&D department onto your farm business, and you are actively contributing to solving a disease problem that threatens the viability of the entire UK arable sector. It is a highly intelligent, proactive, strategic move.
So if we summarize the modern arable playbook based on these adverts, you optimize your incredibly expensive synthetic inputs using microscopic mechanical precision and biostimulants.
Right.
You diversify your biological risk with alternative break crops like winter linseed. You deploy robotics to neutralize the human labor crisis and capture side stream revenue.
Yeah.
And you utilize funded on-farm trials to de-risk your R&D. It is a fiercely proactive, highly technical strategy.
It is. But executing it requires capital, and crucially, it requires highly skilled people.
Which leads us perfectly into our final analysis of the magazine. Investing in the future. We need to examine the machinery market itself and the human capital required to run it. Let's start with the metal. There is a fascinating market trend reported here by Sheffen's Auctioneers. Charles Wadsley, a senior director there, reports an exceptional demand for direct-from-farm high-quality secondhand machinery.
He does, yeah.
He specifically mentions major dispersal sales, including vast fleets from farming companies like Velcor.
The secondary machinery market is absolutely booming. And we have to ask the macroeconomic question, why is there a frenzy for used tractors right now?
It seems counterintuitive. If everyone is supposed to be upgrading to precision tech, why are they scrambling at auctions for used gear?
It is entirely driven by the uncertainty we have discussed for the past hour. The removal of the basic payment scheme, combined with the several seasons of brutal, yield-crushing weather, has put massive pressure on cash flow.
Farmers are feeling the pinch.
They are. And when a business feels a systemic pinch, it either restructures or it liquidates. We are seeing older farmers choosing to retire rather than navigate the post-subsidy transition, leading to full farm dispersal sales. But more commonly, we are seeing major strategic pivots.
Such as?
A farm might be transitioning from a highly intensive, deep cultivation arable system to a lower input, direct drilling regenerative system.
And if they stop plowing, they no longer need the massive 500 horsepower heavy draft tractors.
Exactly. So they sell them at auction to release that trapped capital back into the business.
And on the flip side of that transaction, for the farmer looking to buy, it represents a strategic goldmine. There is an image in the magazine of a massive John Deere forage harvester. It looks like an absolute beast harvesting a huge crop of maize. It looks immaculate, like it just rolled off the factory floor.
But the context of the surrounding article implies it could very well be a secondhand unit from one of these major dispersal sales.
Right. And the strategic takeaway for the listener here is that acquiring new capability does not always mean buying shiny and new from the dealership, taking the massive initial depreciation hit. If you need to upgrade your silage fleet, the secondary market is incredibly vibrant.
Very vibrant.
You can pick up well-maintained fleet-managed equipment, perhaps a machine that has only done 3 seasons on a massive corporate estate and has a full service history at a fraction of the cost of new.
It goes right back to the Crone finance principle we talked about, preserving working capital. Why absorb the brutal first-year depreciation of a brand new harvester if you can buy a high-quality used one and deploy the hundreds of thousands of pounds you saved into the biostimulants, the precision seed genetics, or the infrastructure upgrades we discussed earlier?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It is ruthless, intelligent capital allocation.
It's smart money management. But all this metal, new or used, is completely useless without the human intelligence to operate it, analyze the data it produces, and steer the business.
You need the right people.
We talked about the casual labor crisis for picking broccoli, but there is a much deeper structural crisis regarding securing the next generation of farm management and securing the political buy-in required to keep the industry viable.
This is where the social and political capital of farming becomes just as important as the financial capital.
The magazine highlights 2 brilliant initiatives aimed at building this capital. First, the AgriFuture Scholarship Program. They took 22-year 10 pupils from racially marginalized backgrounds on a dual visit, first to Parliament and then to Surrey Docks Farm.
This is about systematically breaking down the traditional, often entirely closed-loop demographic pathways into agriculture.
NFU Vice President Robin Munt is quoted saying they are trying to support young people to enter careers that may otherwise feel inaccessible. They are teaching these students public speaking, showing them the physical reality of a working farm, and then taking them directly into the halls of power in Westminster.
Think about the technological leaps we have discussed today. Independent hydraulic seed drills, automated computer vision harvesters, complex biological soil interactions, targeted selective veterinary treatments.
It's all extremely high-tech.
If the British agricultural industry is going to survive and master these technologies, it cannot rely solely on the sons and daughters of existing farmers. The talent pool is just too small. The industry needs a massive influx of external intelligence.
New blood.
We need data scientists, software engineers, applied ecologists, and roboticists. Initiatives like this are critical for showing bright urban youth that agriculture is not just about money wellies, it is a highly advanced STEM career.
And then on the political side of the spectrum, there is the NFU Food and Farming Fellowship. They're doing the exact reverse. They are taking politicians out of Westminster and putting them onto farms.
Brilliant move.
The article mentions a specific visit to Barfoot's. Julian Marks, the CEO there, talks about showing these MPs the sharp end of climate change and geopolitics on food production.
It is a vital exercise in grounding policy in physical reality. You can sit in a committee room in London and read white papers about supply chain resilience or environmental targets all day long.
But it's all theory.
But statistics are abstract. Nothing fundamentally alters a politician's perspective, quite like standing in a dusty 30-degree field in July, looking at a failing crop and being shown the sheer terrifying scale of the financial and physical investment required to produce a single head of broccoli.
It bridges the gap between theoretical policy and agronomic reality. And when you look at the final set of images in the magazine, you see a unifying theme emerging from all this chaos. There is a corporate photograph of the Masio Gaspardo machinery team. They're all standing proudly together in matching corporate jackets. The headline proudly states that they are backing the UK market.
In a landscape defined by uncertainty, what does that image signal to the farmer?
It signals corporate permanence. It says, we have a dedicated team, we have infrastructure, we are not fleeing the market despite the post-subsidy turbulence. We are here to support your machinery for the long haul.
It is engineered corporate reassurance.
And right alongside it, there are the adverts for the Farming Monthly podcast itself. They're absolutely plastered with digital touchpoints, massive QR codes, the Amazon Music logo, and icons for X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Pinterest.
It is a visual representation of the modern agronomic nervous system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You are no longer waiting for the postman to deliver a magazine once a month to know what is happening in the industry. You are constantly digitally connected.
It's real time now.
And that is the overarching theme of this entire final section. Connection. Connecting diverse, brilliant youth to the soil. Connecting cloistered politicians to the reality of food production. Connecting international manufacturers to the domestic farmer. And connecting you, the listener, to a relentless stream of digital data, peer networking, and technical analysis.
Because a connected industry is a resilient industry. The complexity of the biological and economic challenges we have unpacked today means you simply cannot farm in an isolated analog silo anymore and expect to survive.
What a journey through these pages. We started in the sweltering heat, looking at the absolute necessity of human vigilance in poultry sheds, the microclimate battle against the rapid life cycle of flies in calf pens, and the complex ecological tightrope of using sheep as biological fire breaks while trying to treat cattle lungworm without chemically decimating the crucial dung beetle populations.
It's a lot to juggle just on the environmental side.
Then, from the physical environment, we moved to the balance sheet. We unpacked the intimidating but ultimately liberating reality of life without the basic payment scheme. We saw how capital is pivoting, with Lloyd's Banking Group aggressively funding regenerative practices based on soil risk profiles, and the push for a billion-pound localized velocity of money through public procurement.
The financial landscape is completely redrawing itself.
Then we went into the machinery sheds. We saw how heavy engineering is evolving to meet these exact pressures. The Tegel processors altering the physical surface area of straw to save 30% and stabilize rumen pH. The absolute precision of the Väderstad independent suspension, ensuring uniform canopy emergence.
Engineering marvels, really.
The necessity of versatile TYM tractors alongside the specialized low-compaction brute force of the Vervaet Hydro Trike. And importantly, the financial leverage of Krohn's 0% finance keeping working capital fluid.
Essential tools for the transition.
We explored the arable fields, where the sticky cost of synthetic nitrogen is driving the adoption of biological catalysts like ambergris. We saw the strategic rotational pivot to alternative crops like winter linseed to break disease cycles. The desperate push for computer vision automation with UPP harvesters to neutralize the human labor crisis. And the opportunity to de-risk this massive R&D burden through Bofence's on-farm trials.
It's a relentless pace of change.
And finally, we looked at how you acquire this capability in a booming, strategic secondhand machinery market, and how the industry is fighting for its very future by cross-pollinating urban youth and grounding politicians in the realities of the soil. It is a massive, incredibly fast-moving picture of an industry in total transition.
It is a remarkable synthesis of challenges. But before we finish, I want to leave the listener with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over as they head back out to the yard.
Let's hear it.
We have spent the last hour meticulously dissecting heady iron machinery, the newest precision-bred crop genetics, the cellular mechanics of chemical biostimulants, and how all of this physical technology is replacing the old, comfortable safety net of government subsidies.
Right.
But I want you to look closely at the trajectory of every single advert and technical article we analyzed today. The independent coulter suspension systems, the automated robotics of the harvesters, the targeted selective treatment of livestock, the regenerative banking contracts that require absolute proof of soil carbon and biodiversity.
They all have one common denominator required to make them function.
Data. Every single innovation we have discussed today generates or relies entirely upon massive amounts of high-resolution information.
That's very true.
So the question I leave you with is this. As the machinery gets exponentially smarter, and as the supply chains, whether it is the risk assessors at Lloyd's Bank or the procurement officers at the local hospital, demand absolute transparency and verified proof of your environmental and agronomic practices, will the most valuable, highest-yielding asset on your British farm by the end of this decade actually be your raw, verified, cryptographic digital data rather than the physical crops and livestock you produce?
That is a phenomenal paradigm shift to consider. Are you ultimately going to be a food producer? Or are you becoming a data manager who happens to leverage biology to grow wheat? It is a question that completely changes how you look at every tractor you finance, every trial you join, every sensor you install.
It really does.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the physical, financial, and biological landscape of July 2026. We hope it has given you a sharper lens to look through the next time you flip open an industry magazine or look out across your fields. Keep adapting, keep pushing the boundaries of your agronomy, and we will catch you next time.